Welcome, everybody, to Write Better Together. I'm Jon Meyers. Hey, look, everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, Jon Meyers.
Hey, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, we have quite the list.
Quite the list.
We are going to be talking about dealing with disappointment.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm disappointed already.
I know. But it's a very relevant topic, I think, for us as creatives. Then we're going to have, or before that, we're going to have call to action responses.
Yay.
We're going to give you a new call to action response, or call to action. Then we're going to have a Hey Jon Meyers segment where I teach Jon Meyers something.
Yay.
And then the final act where we play a silly game.
A silly game. I like silly games.
I think they're all silly. So I didn't mean specifically that this one is silly, but that's what the final act is.
I'm looking for something.
Where you go? What are you doing? Jon Meyers is really close to the camera, looking.
I was looking at quite the list. I don't see a guest.
Yeah, there's no quite the guest this week.
What?
Unbelievably.
What?
It's just us, like the old days.
Not just us.
Right.
Don't say just in front of that. Don't minimize us. But fortunately, for you, I brought a guest.
What?
We've told a story about this person before, or this dinosaur type person.
Did you bring David Lynch?
No. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you've heard a story about this person who turned Emily into a villain. It's Iki.
No. So, Iki is a green dinosaur
In a mint green chair.
He's sitting in a mint green chair, and he was my childhood friend who appeared to me in a dream, and then became my friend, and I wouldn't let anybody
Yoshi,
sit on him.
only larger. I remember that.
Yoshi, but larger. And when I wanted to be an animator, I actually created a CG version of him.
Oh, so maybe you can find a picture of that. And so,
I lost it. I don't know where any of those files are.
Well, that's fine, because our listeners and viewers the people driving in the car can use their imagination.
Exactly. Imagine a big green dinosaur.
So how long since you've interacted with Iki?
I mean, I don't really know how old I was at any point except based on like where I lived.
Okay.
And so I can see I was living in a particular house at that time. So I must have been somewhere between 4 and 10.
you never know how old you are because you're 2 months older than I am. So it's been a while since you and Iki have had a conversation. Did you end it on amicable terms?
That's a good question.
Uh-oh. Aren't you glad I didn't bring Iki out in front of your dad? Future guest, Dean Deal.
Iki, it's good to see you, man.
There you go. That's what I want to know. If you have anything you need to talk about to air out. Disappointment-wise, maybe.
Sorry, we don't talk anymore. I wrote a whole book about imagination and growing up, and so you're mentioned in
imagination.
I actually talk about Iki in that book, in the Redeemed Imagination.
Yes.
So Iki, you're famous now, and hope you're doing well. You know, it's funny. So I was definitely the kid who like believed that my toys were real.
Yes.
And especially because I was of the era of Toy Story. And there's that song, When Somebody Loved Me.
Okay.
That they sing in Toy Story 2 when the girl named Emily stops playing with Jessie, her doll.
Yeah.
I was going into the attic the other day. We have a upstairs attic, so I was crawling up the ladder, and as I like emerged into the attic, I looked over, and there in a see-through like container was a Jessie doll pressed against it. Looking at me with wide eyes, and I was like, oh no, I've become the little girl in the Toy Story.
Emily became Emily.
Oh man, it's so sad.
When Iki spoke to you, well, first of all, did your dad ever put words into Iki's voice or mouth? Or no, it was all
No, they
you?
were scared of Iki because they read This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti.
Oh, I should be scared of Iki. I'm over here leaning over like I'm buddies. And then does Iki have a voice in your head? A
Actually,
particular
no, not
voice?
really. Mm-mm.
Okay. So he communicates through emotions.
I can't remember. It's been
He's right here.
uh I feel like he had kind of like a little baby voice because he was a baby dinosaur.
Oh, but he's
So,
bigger than Yoshi.
oh, he's big, but he was still just kind of a baby.
All right. Well,
Anyway.
he's going to be here for the entire episode if you need support.
Wow. That was an
Meanwhile,
unexpected twist.
meanwhile, you can tell us about how you got out of your bubble.
All right. So, this is going to be mean for me to say. I have a secret. I have a secret project. Jon Meyers will know what I'm talking about because I told him earlier this week that I had a meeting with somebody,
Oh, okay.
and that somebody and I are going to be writing a book together.
Oh,
I am not going to disclose that yet because it's still new. And one, there's always a chance it won't happen. I'm pretty sure it will, though. And then two, I haven't like asked for permission to share this, but I'm just super excited to work with this person, and the ideas that he has are really, really good. And so we're going to be working on that together. And so that's how I got out of my bubble, was planning this new project that I can't talk about.
that's a big one. So will it be this person and Emily Brooks, or will it be
The
are you
collaboration
ghostwriting it?
element is still in the works. Like it's it's going to be like we're co-writing it, but I don't know yet if that's like for the book that Jon Meyers and I are writing. It's like I write a chapter, he writes a chapter. I write a chapter, he writes a chapter. I think this is probably going to be different, but we don't know because we're still in such early stages. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But it's more of like he has the idea and I'm going to be helping him write it. I mean, he's going to be writing it too, but yeah. Anyway,
Wow.
I don't know the answer to that question yet.
Because sometimes it's Abraham Lincoln and Emily Brooks,
Right.
or it's Abraham Lincoln with Emily Brooks.
Right. I
So
think it might be a with, but we'll see. It may be that I contribute a lot more. So,
take about 2 years to get it done, and we'll have a publishing company by then.
yeah.
Against your will.
we have plans for distribution, but yeah.
Yay.
The other thing, so this is actually not even really just me getting out of the bubble, it's more of announcements. I have been a fan of writing excuses since 2016.
Yes.
Many of our listeners probably also listen to writing excuses 15 minutes long because you're in a hurry and we're not that smart. It is the writing podcast started by Brandon Sanderson, Dan Wells, and Howard Taylor. And one of the many guests on that show is Sandra Taylor, wife of Howard Taylor, an
Oh.
author. And I briefly met her and Howard at Gen Con last year. And she taught some wonderful classes that I got to go to. And I didn't even know he was there. I went to go say thank you to Sandra, and he was there. And I was like, Jon, I was with Jon, my husband. I was like, Jon, it's him. And so I got him, he helped me pick out one of his books, and then he drew a cartoon on it, and it was great. Anyway, all of that to say, Jon and Meyers and I have talked about like putting yourself out there, asking people things. We told people to get a no. And so I was like, this is me just getting my no. And I emailed Sandra Taylor and asked her if she would be on our podcast. And she said yes.
You didn't get a no.
I didn't get the no. I got the yes.
Yay.
I guess I'll have to keep asking people
Yes.
things. But yeah, I'm super, super excited. I've learned so much from Sandra and Howard, and so I'm really excited to have her on. So that'll be a while from now, but have that on your radar, people.
I didn't make the connection that they were husband and wife.
Mhm.
Yes.
So he's a graphic novelist, and she is a huge part of. She does a lot of like the marketing and the background stuff with him, and
And
then
will
she
you be
also has a book coming out that we'll talk about.
cool?
All right, Jon Meyers, how did you get out of your bubble?
I got out of my bubble in a very different, weirder way. I don't even know how this person wound up on my radar. Oh, yes, I do. Um, so I am an addict. I'm addicted. I'm coming out as
Oh,
I
oh my
have an
goodness.
addiction to cheese foam. Do you know what cheese foam is?
Oh.
See this
No.
white? If you're watching at home, this white stuff on top.
Oh, okay. Okay, that looks delicious. I was thinking of Cheese Whiz.
No, no, no. So, um, so in my undisclosed location, there are 20 boba tea places.
Oh
Only
man,
one has cheese
yum.
foam. Renee Gutteridge, writer con, organizer, screenwriter, novelist, who Emily you will be meeting in September at WriterCon. She turned me on to cheese foam in Oklahoma City. There are probably 40 boba places, and 6 or 7 of them have cheese foam. So we only have one place in this town with cheese foam, even, and there's 19 different other places that should have it, right? And even like north of Nashville. So I don't know about in Nashville proper, but between like Gallatin and White House and Portland, Tennessee, there's probably 30 boba tea places in the northern suburbs. There's only 3 or 4 with cheese foam. So now that you've seen it, and now you know it's not the white, like, do you know about it?
No, I've never had this.
Okay,
It looks amazing.
so it is amazing. It's kind of like whipped cream cheese, but
Yeah.
it's salty, and so it's literally cheese foam. And
Yeah.
and so I was lamenting online that these people at the place where I go have they went on vacation, like they were open during the blizzard, they were open during the tornado, they were open during Christmas, and they closed for 10 days over 4th of July. So so that's you know, that was in the past from when we were recording this, and went on vacation for the first time ever. And but I'm addicted to cheese foam. Like, what do I do? Like, I drive an hour, I guess, to the nearest big city. And so this woman out of nowhere says, I make it and sell it at my wholesale confectionery. And
Oh, I see where this is going.
and I'm like, you do? And she goes, yeah, but I'm so in this community where I live, there's a community kitchen that you can rent by the hour because there's a commercial kitchen, and
Hmm.
which is a yeah. So if you have your own recipe for hot fudge or your own recipe for this or that, you can rent out this commercial kitchen. It's licensed and everything, and then you're good to go. You can sell it at the farmer's market or whatever. Well, she runs her wholesale company out of that, and then um and ships all over, and then she ships gourmet bakery goods all over the country, exquisite gourmet baking goods all over the country. And she's not really set up to sell cheese foam in person. However, when I told her my dilemma, she may be creating a maybe be creating a cheese foam mix that you can make cheese foam at
Ooh,
your own house by just adding water.
nice.
That does not exist. There's recipes for it online.
Yeah.
So you'd have to get a fork dirty or a blender dirty. And so that's what this is. And so so this is blue raspberry, so a blue raspberry slushy actually with cheese foam on top. And the company is called
Oh,
Drip
wow.
Confections. And she does this thing where a portion of her proceeds, she just hands it back out to the community, and she
Wow.
calls it dripping it forward. And so she has a little card, and it's cash. And so she'll go to the farmer's market, or she'll go to a gas station and look for someone that looks like they need help, or observes a random act of kindness, and
Hmm.
then and she'll just hand them a card and walk away. They don't even know what it
Wow.
is. And then they open the card and it says, and there's two $50 bills in it, and it says, you've been dripped. Drip it forward. And so you're supposed to take 150 and do something nice for yourself, and then you take the other 50 and do something nice. You drip it forward and do something nice for something else.
I love
So
that so much.
Emily, we are now, because you approved it right before we got on here to record, we have an affiliate link for Drip
Yes.
Confections, and she can she can drip all over the country. She can ship all over the country. And then so we'll put a link in the show notes because it's a big
Yes.
long code. It's not something easy like Write Better Together, like Drip Confections / Write Better Together. That's not what it is. So it's like this big long code.
Yeah.
And so we'll put that link to it, and we'll start sharing that link everywhere. And so I tasted as I wanted to, and everything I tasted was amazing. I'm going to read you one of these stories, and then we can move on. So, okay, I'm going to mess up the story. Sorry, listeners. So there's two. I'm combining two stories, and just deal with it. So there is a woman at the gas station, and her payment wouldn't go through, and so while she was struggling through her her purse to find a different form of payment, lo and behold, Drip Confections dripped it forward and paid for her gas, and then handed her a $50 bill, and gave her the little card. The one that I wanted to read to you is there's a woman at the farmer's market, and her payment couldn't go through, and so Amanda is the name of the woman at Drip Confections. Amanda was in line behind her, so she covered that and then gave her a Drip It Forward card and went on her merry way. And then Amanda completed her purchase, went back to her car, and the woman found her and said, well, I want to thank you for that, but I've been driving around on E for empty, and so I didn't have gas to get to wherever my next place was, and so that $50 paid for her
Wow.
to fill up her tank, and so God used her to answer
Wow.
that and answer that
I love
request
that.
to fill up her tank, and so we have an affiliate link with Drip Confections now, and
I
there,
love
that's how
that.
I got out of my bubble.
So we have listener responses.
Yes.
So we did a video with Adrian Sanders talking about boredom sparking creativity and how sometimes you need to like move your body to work things out. And my friend Anna Boring responded and said that it's through walks and runs that she often solves problems. And so I thought
Cool.
that was an interesting confirmation of like this does work for people. So we actually had a call to action in that episode about like try this, like move your body, get out, put your phone away, pay attention, see what happens. And so if any of you also find that that works for you, we'd love to hear from you. What
That
was
Anna
our other?
Boring is so smart. Like
She
everything
really,
she comments is like
I
super smart.
know.
So on the Insta, we had a clip last week when we're recording this, it was last week. Who knows when you're watching it? About how you name your characters. It was on one of our episodes, and or no, it was an afterthought.
It was an afterthought.
And but we had a clip on Instagram of it, and Emily pointed out that the rule, the unwritten rule that it's not written down anywhere, that you don't name two characters with the same first letter of the name. You don't have Andy and Amanda fall in love. And I pointed out that I do break that rule. And in those, like when you write ensembles, there's 14, 16, 18 people to deal with, and sometimes I pair people together with the same first letter intentionally.
But we also did talk about how sometimes screenplays are different because you're hearing the names rather than reading them.
And you're seeing them, and
Yeah.
and then I pointed out that, well, I guess Tolkien didn't get the message,
Yeah.
didn't get the memo, because he named Soren and Saruman. Am I saying those right?
Sauron and Saruman.
All right, so he named those two. They both start with S in the book.
Yeah.
And then Joshua, one of our
Yes.
followers, added some information to that and said in the OG animated film, they changed Saruman to Ahriman to prevent confusion.
Which is interesting because it makes sense, but I
If you
don't
were reading
know.
it,
I feel like the diehard fans would be like, "What? Why?"
diehard fans did do that. Bashki, the director, Ralph Bashki, the animator, he pushed back. But
Mm.
when people say the studios forced us to do this, so Saul Zaentz, I couldn't tell the story if he was still alive because he was super powerful, but he's no longer with us. But he was known for getting his way,
Mm.
and we watched this film in film school, and it was a daily battle between Bashki and Saul Zaentz. United
Mm.
Artists was the distributor, but Saul Zaentz Productions, they were in charge. They cut the checks, and whoever cuts
Yeah.
the checks
Yeah.
in charge. And it was him. He micromanaged John Fogerty, and there's a song about him, about how he does. Saul can't dance, but he'll steal your money. And so that's how he was. He had to have his way, and people backed down because he had the money. And so it was just him getting his way.
I also realized that I didn't even follow that rule very well in my recent book because I have a Naira and Navina and a Murta and Morali.
It's a rule that's not a rule.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just don't have them so similar that people get confused. I think there are ways to make them dissimilar in addition to the first letter. So
What
if
the
people
issue
get
is,
confused, if your beta readers get confused, then pay attention.
the issue, yes, I agree. The issue is that people that make these random rules that aren't rules, the unwritten rules, they don't give the audience enough credit, period. No discussion. They're like, the audiences are too dumb. They're going to get confused. No, they're not, because you created two fully developed characters. I have a character, George, and a character, Georgina. One's male, one's female, but they are complete opposites. Viewers, they're smart enough to be able to tell, if you covered up their names, that they're two different characters.
This is funny because I watch a lot of Korean shows and other foreign shows, and so I don't even know the people's names half the time.
Good example. You don't even know if they're saying a name of a person or a place.
Exactly.
There's a million examples that break that rule that isn't a rule, and the Tolkien one is the one that came to my mind. All right, we're going to talk about disappointment. I hope Iki isn't disappointed because I keep setting this cheese foam drink in his lap.
Probably sneaking some sips.
He better not. I'm a germaphobe. When was the last time you were disappointed, Emily?
Every day.
Oh my gosh. We're going to make light of disappointment. That's not what we're going to do.
What about you?
Do you want to get into that part early? I can. So one of these books on this shelf, this is all out of order of how I plan to talk about it, but that's fine. How long since you've read Boundaries?
Oh, at least 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, mine's probably
It's so good.
Mine's probably been 10 years. So I don't think I think this might have been in one of the extension of the Boundaries books.
Okay.
I don't think it's in the original Boundaries, and I didn't look it up before this episode. I should have. And but in one of a boundary related books, and you can correct me if it's in the actual first one, it says get rid of all of your expectations. Is that in Boundaries?
I mean, it's been long enough that I don't know.
So it must not be, because I think you would remember, or I would remember, because this entire book was a boundary extension, I'm going to say. And so maybe one of our viewers or listeners can correct us. And was these tactics on how to get rid of your expectations. And I agree with Boundaries. I think the
Do
book
they
is
mean
amazing.
expectations in other people? Because usually it's about relationships. Or do they mean expectations in general?
This book said, so yes to both. So like I said, I'm a big fan of the Boundaries book. I don't think it's in the original one, but it was getting rid of all expectations. And I don't agree with that. But expecting someone the first part that you just said, expecting someone to follow through, if you get rid of that expectation, then you can't get disappointed. And so when you said, when was the last time I was disappointed? It's been a long time, because I don't expect anyone, like, if I was getting married Saturday, I'm not, but if I was, I wouldn't expect that they were going to show up.
Oh, wow.
They've trained, like, that's not right though. And so you have to have expectations to, like, you can't, that's why you get disappointed, because you have expectations.
Yeah.
So the book was right if you could get rid of all of them, but you want to rob your life of all expectations? No, you want to look forward to your next marriage or whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
You want to look forward to 100 people showing up at your book signing and then only one person shows up. Oh, well, if you didn't have that expectation of only one showing up, I mean, of 100 showing up, you wouldn't go if you thought only one was going to show up.
Yeah.
And so expectations drive us.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. Do you
I'm
want, like,
curious now to read like what point they were making with that, because that does seem so, I mean, that almost seems more kind of like Star Warsy, like don't have any relationships and don't get attached to anything, and that's not how I live my life.
no,
I love
I
Star
don't think,
Wars, but it's wrong for me.
creatives do. I think there's a truth in there that, like, you get disappointed when you have expectations in a relationship, and but you don't look to someone else to fulfill your expectations in a relationship.
Well, and we've talked about this before, that we don't set our hopes on things we can't control. I don't think that means that we don't ever like hope for something that's out of our control, but I think we don't like put stake in it, if that makes sense. You're not trying to compile my thoughts on this.
So we're both very hopeful people.
Yeah.
And but your answer was you're disappointed every day. And I haven't answered your question yet of when the last time I was disappointed. But this was a long time ago. And so if we're both hopeful, so why is that? What's the difference? It's not because I don't have expectations, because I didn't believe in that advice.
So if something happens that is opposite of what you expected, would you just say that you're not disappointed because you were like, you just shrug it off like, oh, well, I didn't expect that, but that's okay?
Okay, well, now to answer that, I have to say the first part, what I was going to start with anyway. So last time I was disappointed, and this will answer that. The last time I was disappointed was I applied for the MFA program and I didn't get in, and the program that we were in together. And if I would have gotten in, I got in 2 years later.
Right.
I wouldn't have got my master's. I probably wouldn't have become a teacher, because that's when I fell in love with being a teacher. And the programs are two different programs, and getting my master's first made me a better teacher. And by the time I was getting my MFA 2 years later, then I had all 2 years under my belt of teaching. And so it freed me up to focus on the MFA and not to focus on the pedagogy of the teaching.
Yeah.
And so the day I got the news, though, it was during finals week of getting my bachelor's, and like I was devastated because I didn't have a plan B. Everyone thought Jon Meyers was going to be the screenwriter that was going into the MFA program, and I couldn't even worry about it because I was in the middle of finals for my BA. But so I called the leader of my small group, and she was like, "That's great." Bethany Smith, "That's great." And I'm like, I didn't want to hear that's great.
No.
And that means God has something better in store for you. But I carry that with me now all the time, all these years later. So I guess that's why I don't get disappointed. So when you got your first rejection since we started working together, I gave you that, like I told you that story.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the difference, because the reason we do this podcast and we're building this community, it started out as a different idea to create this other organization, this other entity that's still going to happen. But look at the lives that get that we're impacting, that send us little messages and stuff. That wouldn't happen if we were disappointed and we just gave up and said, oh, well, the first organization didn't work and we just gave up. No, we did plan B, but plan B was God's plan A the whole time. I don't get disappointed now because I'm just like, oh, well, God's going to do something different.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that I mean, I generally throughout the span of this podcast have shown that I just have a lot more emotions.
You feel
And
more than
so
I do.
I do get disappointed. And it's not that I just like sit and dwell on it, but um it's like, oh, this thing was canceled that I wanted to go to. That's disappointing. But I'm not like, oh, my life is ruined, you know.
You do have more emotions than I do, but I think that's because you're older than I am. No, I think that's because of uh, the Bethany Smith reminder of God has something better in store, and so it immediately turns into like it's okay to feel. I think that's what you started saying, and I interrupted. I'm sorry. That it's okay to feel that disappointment
Yes,
because
that's
you
what I
don't
was trying to say.
because you
Yeah.
don't live in it and you don't dwell on it. And but I am like I feel it for 1 second, and then I'm like, oh, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Now what cool thing is going to happen?
Yeah,
Okay,
and
go
I
ahead.
think that's a great attitude. And oh, I know what I was going to say was that we've talked about rejection before, and that's again something that's not in your control. And like you said, if one person says no, they weren't the right person for you. Like you want somebody to say yes to you who is saying yes, like 100%, I am in. I'm going to support you and I love what you're doing, right? You don't want somebody to be like, I guess, right? And I think that's what agents are thinking when they are giving feedback or when they're giving acceptances is they are trying to say the best yes that they can possibly say, that they're fully committed. And so if they don't feel that, it doesn't mean your work is bad. They're just like, this isn't for me.
Right. Their job is to make money, and they say this won't make me money, but it might make someone else money.
Yeah.
And you don't want someone to rep you that doesn't see you as a big bag of money.
Or who maybe they do think like, oh yeah, this is going to be really good, but I'm not the person to champion this because
True.
I'm not passionate about it.
That's what happened. So we have a story that we talked about before the podcast. We can't tell you people. This person said, "No, I can't do anything with this," and gave
Mm-hmm.
it to someone else who said, "Not right for me, but I know the exact right person is." And they've already had all the meetings, and now they're putting financing together.
Yeah.
So yeah, the bigger overarching thing to answer your question for me though is it's like if God wanted to like so God God wanted this thing to happen. All I can do is get in his way, right? And so he's gonna do whatever he's gonna do. He will eventually get the person to the promised land, even if it's not the same person. Even if
Mm.
Moses doesn't get to go into it, if he wants his people into the promised land, he's gonna get those people there, and one way or another. And so you can get in the way, or you can get out of the way. Is how I look at it.
I think too, this is making me think of what you're talking about is going, okay, I'm shifting my perspective from I had this expectation and this was the vision that I had for my future. Now that's gone. You can either then look at your future as like empty confusion, nothingness, like I don't know what's next, and that's really scary, or you can look at it with the idea that anything now is possible. And I love this. There's this essay by Aldous Huxley called, I think it's called The Myth of Tragedy. And it is incredible. And I quote it all the time. But basically, he talks about in storytelling, like tragedy is a myth or tragedy is not real. Tragedy is when a story ends on something bad happening and then refuses to acknowledge that life continues afterwards. So he uses an example of a story in the Odyssey where they're on the ship and a bunch of people just died. and the crew is obviously disappointed and they're sad and they're like, this was awful. But the story doesn't end there. Like some stories, it's a tragedy. It ends like that, and then you're just left with the tragedy. And he's like, no, that story doesn't end there, because on like the next paragraph, it says that they got hungry and they decided to get something to eat, and they ate, and then they decided what the next course was. And so even when his message there is tragedy isn't real, because we actually do keep going and we do move on, and when we think of our lives as the next step, as anything is possible, then it means that life is going to continue and can even get better from there.
Look at how many Detour. So Detour, that's one of my life tenets. So Detour doesn't keep you from your destiny. Look how many shipwrecks Paul was on, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm trying to go here, I'm trying to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God had a different plan, and you're going here, and it might be a shipwreck. Well, you can be disappointed, or you can keep going.
Yeah.
And you just keep going. And then, but I keep going with this. Oh, well, this is going to be even better. This is going to be something cool.
Yeah, and two, it's sometimes we are set on the wrong things. Like sometimes we have our expectations in things that aren't really going to give us life at all. And sometimes disappointment points us back into the right direction of what we really need.
That's a good point.
I just watched The Princess and the Frog, so I'm thinking of Mama Juju.
Okay, fair enough.
Has there, okay, so you mentioned the time where, so like if you hadn't had that initial disappointment about MFA program, then all this other stuff wouldn't have happened. So I think that's true for me too. When I think about times when I was disappointed, like I also had a rejection for an MFA program before I got into the one that I ended up in, and so much of my life would be so different if if I'd gotten into the other school. And so I think, are we ready for a call to action already? Should I wait?
Sure. No, it's fine.
I think a really good call to action would be to think about a time in your life where you were disappointed, where something better happened.
There's so many. You people listening, you better have a bunch of these for your call to action, because there's a ton of those.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't know them in the moment of your rejection, but 6 months later, you're like, whoa, look at this.
Yeah. And even small things like, oh, I didn't get to go to this event or something, but then what did I get to do instead of that? And you get to make that choice too. Like when something is taken away, you get to fill that back in. So tell us about that. You can write a poem or a song or a story, or you can just tell us in a message. And we would love for you to share that. So we have this on our Facebook page. There's a spot where it has all of our call to action responses, and it's pinned to the top of the page. Not responses, all of our calls to action, and it's pinned to the top of our page. And you can respond to our call to action. You can also respond in the post for this episode. You can respond on our show notes at writebettertogether.com/podcast and find this episode and share. Or you can respond on our Instagram. Basically, we will find you wherever you decide to share this disappointment story.
Until it's time to record, and then we're like, where was that story at?
Yeah.
Where did that person share that brilliant insight?
Exactly. That does happen all the time.
Wait, I have one more thing to say. And so, from a book that we previously discussed in the scavenger hunt, The Promise of Failure by Jon McNally, this book talks a lot about about this topic of disappointment. And I randomly opened it to this page. So if you go by what I said earlier in the conversation, God wanted me to open it to this specific page and share this with you people. Why one book succeeds and another doesn't. is often a mystery. Everyone, agents, editors, publicists, booksellers, may get behind a book that doesn't sell squat. The book disappears after the first week it's out. On the other hand, another book may get roundly rejected by every major publisher in New York, only to get taken by a very small press and then sell copies in the six figures. An anomaly, to be sure, but I've seen it happen. But I also believe that if a publisher really wants a book to succeed, if they put the money and the advertising power behind it, that book will likely rise to the top of the bestseller list. What do you think about that?
I think that's really important. It's again like how much of this is out of your control. But I also have to be transparent and say, like, if I was in that position where I was the author, that like they were like, this is great, this is going to sell really well, and then you sell like 5 copies, I think I would definitely have to mope about that for a little bit. I just know that I would. Like, I would mope. So how would you handle
No,
that
so this is
disappointment?
interesting because I would be, if it was only 5 copies, I'd be like, God got that book into those 5 people that he wanted to read that book.
See,
and then they're gonna go do some like we know people that have written to us and said, if it weren't for this podcast, I would have never given this script to this person
yeah.
who rejected it, but then gave it to someone else. And so that's what, if 5 people took that book, that's what would happen.
Yeah. See, this
That's
is why people like us need each other because I'm the one who would just be like, I would just mope. And then but that is so encouraging to think about the impact over the numbers, and like, and you know that it's about more than the world would call success, and more about like you are just listening to God and doing what you believe is right, and then you know that that will bear fruit.
Yeah, and even for people that aren't Christians that are listening, even non-believers, you can't change the whole world. Like, you can
Yeah.
only change one person at a time, or help. I shouldn't even say change. Help one person at a time. So if you're, everything that I just said, if you're not a Christian, you can still, and that book wound up into 5 people's hands, you can still be a hopeful person, and you hope that that book made a difference in those 5 people.
And, you know, so this just reminded me of a great illustration. And this is going to be like a quote from like, I met a guy at Northwind Manor, and we were talking about, which is the creative community in Nashville. And we, we were talking about this similar topic about impact and audience and how much, you know, how many books do you sell, and all of this. And what he said, and he quoted another person. And so I don't know where the original quote came from, but what they said was, you can be the person who donates $5 to 1,000 people, right? So you impacted 1,000 people by giving them each $5, or you can save one person from a burning building. And it's that idea of, it's not about the numbers, it's about the impact. And so that's been really meaningful and helpful for me whenever I think about like, oh, this blog post only got 10 views. You know, I really wanted it to have 1,000 views, and maybe those 10 people really needed it.
Or that one life that got saved from the burning building.
Yeah.
That person goes and impacts 1,000 people. You don't,
Yeah.
you impacted one, but then they go and impact 1,000.
Yeah.
So
And then also, then you have to think about, what are you going to do about it? If your book sells 5 copies, what can you do with your next book?
well, like, yeah, in that quote, in that McNally quote, well, if the publisher would have done this and the publisher would have done that, well, but they didn't, and like, you can't,
Right. Exactly.
like, well, you can't,
Yeah.
you can't have that. I mean, you can wonder it, but
Right.
you're not, that's not in your control, like what you said earlier.
So you make the
Brilliant.
best of it. You learn from it, and then you take what you learned into your next project.
Brilliant conversation, if you ask me. Good thing Iki was here for this.
Yeah. I'm sure he got a lot out of it. Hey, Jon Meyers.
Yes.
Okay, we have talked about REM sleep.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about EMDR therapy.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about octopuses dreaming.
Oh, yeah.
And we've briefly mentioned Mike Birbiglia.
Yes.
Do you know what disorder Mike Birbiglia has? You probably do, but we're going to get a little deeper.
I don't know the name of it.
You probably know how it manifests.
He's a sleepwalker,
Right.
but there's a name for that. I don't know what it
There
is.
is. So, we've talked about all of these things, but we haven't talked about sleep disorders and dream disorders. So, Mike Birbiglia has REM sleep disorder. Rapid eye movement disorder. So
Oh.
basically, we've talked about rapid eye movement and how it is like the active state of dreaming. And usually, what happens is your body actually goes into a state of temporary paralysis. But with people with REM behavior disorder, that doesn't happen. Their body basically doesn't go into that sleep paralysis, and so they act out their dreams. And so if you've ever listened to Mike Birbiglia, he talks about this and how dangerous it is and terrifying, and how he has to like sleep in a separate room from his wife and kid with the door locked and him like strapped to his bed. I'm assuming you've seen these specials of him talking
Yep.
about it, or his
Yes.
movie.
So you didn't stump me this time,
No,
but I don't know all the details.
I mean, I just thought we needed to talk about it. We'd never made the connection. So here's another thing. So nightmares. Do you ever have nightmares?
I never knew until you just now introduced this segment. I didn't know there were dream disorders. So, no, we've talked. I don't dream that often, and I still don't. But I've started dreaming a little bit more now, as we've
Mm,
talked about. But they haven't had any nightmares yet. Don't wish them on me.
no. So one interesting thing is that we do have like there are different stages of sleep, and so we'll have different kinds of dreams during those stages. So like during REM sleep, you might have the more like weird, really weird dreams with really complex plots, whereas in the other phase of sleep, which is like deep sleep, they're more just like it actually this says dreams about a color or an emotion. So really like simpler and more associative. um but people who have nightmares, a lot of kids like have night terrors and things like that. What I learned is that one trigger for nightmares is taking antidepressants. And I learned that firsthand in college. um,
A good place to learn that.
yeah. So when you initially, for a lot of people, including myself, if you initially start taking serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, you will have more vivid dreams. And I had crazy vivid dreams in college after increasing my dose to the point where they were like becoming lucid, where you can control your dreams and you like
Mm.
know that you're dreaming. Have you ever been able to do that?
Nope.
It's it's wild. It's so weird. So some people actually do that on purpose. I don't know why you would want to do that on purpose, but
No. Don't do that. Don't try that at home, people.
no. No. All right. One more thing, one more dream fact is do you know anything about sleep paralysis? And have you experienced it?
When I was a child, my family would travel back to when I was a child. So when I was a child, yeah, I don't know when it stopped, and it always was triggered. Like I had it in my early 20s, but I don't remember. Like I can't remember. Uh, I didn't get saved till I was an adult, so I don't remember if it stopped when I got saved or if it stopped prior to me getting saved. But it stopped when I was in my young 20s. Um, so yes, I know what that is.
Yeah, so it's not even a disorder necessarily. It's really just when you're in between like being awake and being asleep, and you feel like you're awake when you're not, basically, and you feel like you really want to wake up, and you might have that experience of hearing sounds like sometimes. So this happens to me only when I nap. It doesn't happen to me at night. It happens when I nap. I don't know
So it
why.
still happens to you now, currently. It could
Oh, it
happen today.
happens to me all the time if I nap.
Wow.
Where I hear like I'll hear like bees buzzing around me, or I'll hear my name being called, and I'm like, somebody please wake me up. This is awful. I just want to get up. But
Iki, have you been Iki, have you been doing this to Emily all these years?
um so one interesting thing about sleep paralysis is that they actually believe, they being just some people speculating, I've heard this many times, is that a lot of people who experience sleep paralysis think that they're seeing aliens. Um,
Ah,
so they think that a lot of people who claim to have seen aliens are actually having sleep paralysis, because a lot of times you will feel a presence in the room or even see a presence in the room. And because so a lot of times in sleep paralysis, you're dreaming about being in the place that you're in. So it feels very real, but then you'll see like some weird figure there that shouldn't be there. It's kind of creepy.
so when I had it as a child,
Yeah,
I I don't put garbage into me, so it's probably a reason why I don't put nightmares have
sure.
nightmares, because I don't put any garbage in me. So when I like, you're forcing me to think about this. I wouldn't think about this or have this conversation. So if it
Oh, I'm
returns,
sorry.
I'll blame you. Um, so, but at the end of the dream that you just taught me wasn't really the end. These like eyes would peek through a window, or
Yeah,
eyes would peek over the edge of a door or something, and then
yeah,
that's when I would get paralyzed.
yeah, yeah,
But I can remember that. But again, that was like when I was at my grandma's house when I was 9 or something. I
yeah.
remember that though. All right, that will not happen in Jesus' name. I will not allow that to happen. Do you know where nightmare comes from? The word nightmare.
Ooh, that's a good question. No, I don't.
Someone taught me this, so it could be wrong. I think someone in grad school. Someone, I don't know who taught me that. So it's a nightmare because it's a mare, a horse, right?
Okay,
And
I thought it might be horse related, but
it's like a horse is sitting on, the weight of a horse is sitting on you and you can't move.
what?
So when you said paralysis, it's the weight of
Yeah,
a horse sitting on you at night and you can't move.
that's crazy.
I don't even know if
What?
it's true, but someone in grad school taught me that. It might have been
Wow.
Hope. Remember Hope?
Yeah, yeah.
It might
I
have been
knew
her.
someone who, she had a sleep disorder where her, I think it was related to epilepsy, but she would have dreams that were so vivid that she would think they were real and wake up and be like, "Oh my gosh, like my mom has cancer." And would like call her mom, and her mom's like, "Oh no, like you just dreamed that."
I've had those dreams. Haven't you?
I mean, there have been times, but usually like a little bit after waking up, I'll be like, "Oh, that was just a dream."
I've
But
had
there have
those.
been like conversations that I've thought I've had because I had them in a dream. And I tend to have vivid dreams. And as a kid, I used to think my dreams were real because I would get mad at my sister. I think I told that story before on here, where like she hurt me in my dream, and then I was like so mad at her for weeks.
Yeah, you said that on your villain origin story.
Oh yeah,
You
you're
would
right.
do
I
mean
did.
things
That was
and you
my
would
villain
blame
origin story.
you
My
would
man.
blame our buddy
Yeah.
Iki here
Yeah.
for being mean to your sister. Poor Iki. So
Yeah.
misunderstood.
Poor Iki. Well, if you want more dream stories that you've heard before, then ring the bell. Subscribe to this podcast, and most of all, we want to hear from you. We want your reviews. We want your call to action responses. We really are creating this podcast to be community focused and community built, and so you are important to it. And so we'd love to hear from you. We'd love for you to share this podcast so other people can find it. And we're thankful for everything that you do.
Because we believe in gratitude.
Yes, we do. All right. It's time for the final act.
Yay.
Before I name the game, I need you to write down one of your life tenets that we have not discussed on the podcast.
Oh, well, I don't know which. You think I remember? You think I watched this show? I don't know what we talked about or not. Are you a mentalist? It is written down, ma'am.
All right. The name of the game is Jon Meyers' Life Tenet in reverse.
If only I have ever built that page on our website where I started to collect them.
One day we're going to have all of Jon Meyers' life tenets on there.
Okay.
All right. The prize is the National Audubon Society Field Guide of Birds.
Cool. So you'll need that. I asked you a question on the Facebook page on
Really?
on Self Promo Monday, which shout out to Self Promo Monday. If you all have a small business or a craft business or an appearance to promote on Mondays, go to our Facebook page and promote it on there. David Hal Chester, a future guest, promoted. He has a new music video out. It's beautiful. And there's a bird in it, and I asked you what that bird was.
Oh, I'm excited now. I love answering people's questions about birds.
All right.
I will say this is my favorite bird, the cedar waxwing, or one of my favorites.
What if that's the bird? No.
Maybe. But I just got to see one last Saturday while John and I were kayaking. So I was excited. My husband, John, to clarify.
I say, I'm not getting in a kayak. I knew it was your husband, John, and not me.
It's one of my favorite things in the world. Okay.
Cool.
So the game is you are going to tell me your life tenet, but you are going to read it backwards.
Backwards by word or backwards by letter?
Backwards by letter. And then I have to guess what it is.
So I've had my students do this.
Really?
Because in Red Room in Twin Peaks, they have to do creative elements, or they did in the past. They had to do creative elements, and creative element would be worth 10 points, but I would double those points if they could use Red Room backwards language when they shared it with the class.
I would know what that is if I had watched Twin Peaks.
The man in the Red Room, everyone in the Red Room talks in this backwards kind of. It's not completely backwards language. That's a misnomer, but anyway, here we go. So I'm going to read it backwards.
Yep.
And then you're going to tell me what it is.
Yes.
Do I need to make it sound like I'm in the Red Room? Like that? Or do I kind of just read it normal backwards?
It might be easier for me if you just read it normal.
Should I sound out the silent letters? No, I want you to lose the game.
No? Yeah.
Ready?
I'm ready. Are you?
That makes one of us. Met de Noof U Nat Reteb Singint Evial.
Okay, that was too fast.
That was too fast?
Yeah.
I was going to say, or in Red Room language, Miet Nut Rebet Zink Eval.
All right. Say it to one more time. I've got a pen and paper this time, and I should have started that way.
Oh my gosh. Met Denauf We.
Wait, no. One word at a time.
That's 3 words right there. We. Some of these letters have multiple sounds, depending on if they're in the beginning of a word or the end of a word.
Okay.
Nat. Reteb. I hope you people are playing at home. Sejinit. It's only one syllable, but it takes 2 syllables to say it backwards.
Say it one more time.
Sejinit. That was like perfect.
This is so much harder than I thought it was going to be.
Eval. The listeners at home already have it. They've got it figured out.
This is so hard.
You invented the game. The game we're going to play next week, oh, buddy, it's so easy and fun.
Okay. Was that it?
One, yep, that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words.
Okay, so my other question is, did you read it backwards by letter and by word?
Yep. We read it from right to left. It's a command.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Leave
Ooh, yes. The next one's hard. The third word is easy.
better.
Correct?
Leave things
Ooh, yes.
better
You got the hard one.
than
Yes.
we found them.
You found them, but yeah.
Then you found them.
Leave things better than you found them.
So leave things better than you found them.
Correct.
I like
don't
that.
know. Yeah.
I like them a
And
lot.
people. Leave people better than you found them.
That's good. I like it.
Is it in the book?
In what book? Oh,
I
I
don't
think
know.
it is.
I
You're
don't know.
giving me
What
a
book
face.
are we writing?
The book we're writing. I feel like you may have mentioned it. That's good.
I can't remember.
So
All right.
you have won the National Audubon Society Field Guide of Birds Eastern Region.
So in 2026, when I actually receive the copy, I can look up the book, look up the bird in David's video.
Yeah,
There's
now I've
actually
got
more
to
than
know.
one bird, but I asked about a specific.
I've got to
bird.
know.
All right. Good job.
Good job.
Yay.
Well, people,
We
couldn't have done it
without you.
without you.